Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Jeff Kilburg, CEO of KKM Financial. Jeff, it's great to see you as always. And it looks as if this February rally is petering out a bit. We've been pretty range bound for the most part.
Well, Jill, yes, you're right. But bigger picture, this week we saw new all-time highs across the indices. We're seeing small caps really resurge after just a couple of years of dragging in underperformance. But here we are now looking at the S&P 500 back above 3,900, and it seems like the week ahead. And if you look back historically, Joe, which I love to do, let's look back to 1971. President's Week, which is only 4 trading days, historically has been a bearish week. We have seen, by and large, a week where it's slightly down. So I get a little bit concerned going into the week ahead after the week we had. But I know we're wrapping up earnings season. We've seen about 315 names report the S&P 500. But bigger picture, I think the markets are in a pretty good spot, at least from a trajectory point.
And also going into next week, we have options expiration as well.
We
So
do.
it's kind of everything's tying in together here.
Yes, we have options, we have PPI, we have retail sales. I know we talk a lot about the consumer. Most of the people are consuming cryptocurrencies these days, but the consumer by and large, that'll help us understand from a retail component. But some of the earnings this week, if it was Disney, really gives us an idea or a view into the consumer. Consumer is doing quite well, and it's a little dislocated from the real economy here in Chicago versus the stock market. But nonetheless, I think the week ahead is going to bring some opportunity. But I think it's more important than ever to understand your exposure. We talk about exposure, single stocks or sector tilting. But I think as we move forward, as we're at these all-time highs, I think understanding that, and we really like small caps right now. We still like industrials. And I think it's interesting to see how information tech, the FANG stocks, we are seeing a little bit of diminish there. And there's a great point I brought up earlier this week on CNBC. I actually didn't bring it up. Carrie Firestone did. But the point is that if you have to understand this move in the small caps, 1,500 of the Russell 2000, if you take 1,500 of those stocks and combine them from a market cap perspective, Jill, they don't even add up to Apple. They don't even add up to Microsoft. So this move in the small caps, you have to respect it, but you have to understand we are still being driven by large giant cap tech.
And it's interesting. The technology that we've been using throughout the pandemic, it's clear that these were the trends that have been accelerated from 3 to 5 years out. And of course, that justifies the run that it had. But I don't necessarily think that it's just going to go away and a light switch is going to flip on and we go back to where we were in Q4 of 2019. I think the technology that we are using right now, Zoom, for example, in the cloud and so forth, to do not only just trade talks, but CNBC and all the other media around the world will certainly be here to stay because it's much easier to access a more diverse base for your guests, right? When you can virtually do it and not have to worry about time zones and getting someone in studio and dealing with traffic. Like, look how it just broadened your investor base, your guest base, your workforce. I don't think this technology is going anywhere.
You bring up a great point, and I do miss seeing you in person in Times Square at the market site there at the Nasdaq. But nonetheless, you talk about efficiency. You're absolutely right. The efficiency that this technology is really brought out in the wake of the pandemic, I don't think it goes away and it actually grows. But some of the names, if it's the Pelotons or some of these other names, maybe they kind of stabilize a little bit. But yes, Microsoft, Google, Apple, all the technology, we are buying more and more electronics. So I understand that movement, but it's also looking at how do you get diversified inside technology. We look at a name like Palo Alto Networks, cybersecurity. We're looking at other different software, Salesforce. There's a lot of different names that are going to continue to thrive in this new work from anywhere. I hope to be back in the office here in Chicago at some point soon, but nonetheless, you're right. Things have changed, not only professionally, Jill, but also personally.
I would agree with you there too. It's been almost a year since I've seen you. That's pretty crazy to think about, Jeff. Appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks and thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq.